Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Lookup Podcast, episode 4.
I think it's
season
5.
2, episode 5, season 2. We're on one of the two. We are back in the car, and we hope you all had a great Thanksgiving.
We got a special guest again. She's back.
She's back, our favorite girl.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I hope you all had a wonderful time with your family. This was one of those Thanksgiving weekends where I feel exhausted after. Instead of feeling like really relaxed, I'm like really tired.
Right.
We did a lot, family time and shopping. We did a lot of shopping. And now I'm like breaking out on my face, and I'm not, trying not to wear makeup so that it could all clear back up, since I was wearing a lot of makeup over the past few days. But yeah, I just thought I would let you know that.
Wow. Okay.
Just off the top of my head.
Very personal.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great today, honestly.
Good.
As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you look at our TikTok, I've cut off my facial hair.
Did something new. Well, you've done it before, but
I have.
Just changing things up. I think it's really good to always change things up.
Right. Because sometimes you have to shake things up so you can wake things up. Get out. But
what are you thankful for?
So what I'm thankful for. So over this weekend, I've just learned that, man, your health is your wealth. Your time is the most valuable thing on this planet. It's the only thing that doesn't replenish. You don't get it back. So, you should be treating your time, special, man, because you just don't know when you're going to go home to the Lord, right? And when he calls you home, or he gives you that warning, like you got to change your life, you got to fix your life, or you're going to die, buddy. So in short, my family has been very sick recently. And my grandmother, and now my aunt's in the hospital with blood clots. And it's just like, dude, it's been a huge wake-up call for me of just being like, okay, I need to get my health together now, not when I'm 40, 50, 60 years old. Let me take care of it at 28.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the things that they are sick with could have been
They're
prevented.
Avoidable.
They're not like, like diseases that, they can't.
Right. It's not terminal.
Preventable.
It's not terminal illnesses.
Not terminal illnesses,
I mean?
and not also things that weren't preventable. A lot of things that just kind of spring upon you like a virus or whatever.
Right.
Like it was all things that they could have prevented.
Right.
But due to just
negligence.
Yeah, negligence.
It's negligence, right? And it reminds me of the parable of the talents, right? Where there's 3 servants, and these 3 servants are given treasures. They're given talents, and one servant is given the most. One servant's given, the medium amount. One servant's given not very much, and the servant that wasn't given much just sits on his blessing, and then just buries it in the backyard, and it just rots there, and it just it breaks down. And then the other servants, they reinvested it, and it grew. And then when the master came back, he said, well done, good and faithful servant, to the other 2, but called the one that just sat on it and didn't do anything with it, and was negligent toward the talent that the master gave him. He called him a fool. And I think we literally are given talents. We are given our health. We're given, the ability to run, to walk, to
That's
do
a
all
good
of this
point,
stuff.
just right there. That I think so many of us, we look at talents as like, sorry if you can hear some music in the background.
Yeah,
there's a truck next to us that's like blasting music.
And I'm trying to pull up so
and then he just keeps getting inching
and he just
closer.
keeps inching forward.
When you ever are at a stoplight and then you look over and they're like
windows down
or something, but
windows down. He's booming,
yeah,
bro. He's not playing at all.
Anywho,
but
back to what I was gonna say. I think that's a really good point. I think so many of us will look at talents or treasures as simply as having a lot of money, for one, or 2, having like a natural born talent such as like singing, or you're very artistic, or you're, you know, creative in some sort of way, we can look at that as talents and treasures, when in reality, like, if you can just kind of I feel like it's been like a theme of this whole season so far, of just looking at everything in your life as a gift and
Yeah.
being so appreciative of everything, you
Right.
then start to realize, like what you were just saying, that
Yep.
even walking is a talent and speaking is a talent. Just, I mean, not even speaking what we may in this culture could be considered as well, but just being able to like open our mouth and have noise
Yep.
come out of it and form words and sentences and thoughts, like that is truly a talent and a treasure
It is.
to keep. And I think everything, and so it's like we were all given treasures and talents, and it's like when we just choose to sit on it and waste our lives away and do nothing,
You're a fool.
like, yeah, you know, he calls him foolish.
You are literally a fool to be given a gift and not be grateful for it.
Yeah, and what's funny is because I look at that man, woman, whatever, who what he did is he put the treasure away and he left it there so that nothing could happen to it, right? You think of, like, I look at that story and I see him and I'm like, he had good intentions. Because, you know, I mean, imagine your friend says, hey, can you, like, you know, watch this $10,000 for me. Let's just not even say that. Like, hey, like, I'm going to give you the $20. Like, can you hold this on to me for a little bit? Like, I'm going to go somewhere. I don't know. Just imagine that. And it's like, you're just like, yeah, totally. It's like, you're not going to want to, like, you just put it in like a back drawer or something so you don't spend it, so you don't use it. You just like leave it there. Because in your heart and mind, you just feel like that's the best way to go about things so that he comes back and it's there. Right? So it's like, I even look at that story as like, wow, like he had good intentions for what it seemed, but yet his master came back and called him a fool.
Right.
And I think it just goes to show, like,
what do you think that's saying?
We can have good intentions in our lives of, like, so much so that just think of the idea of risk. You know what I mean? Like, risk, just that word itself is very scary, and it's very, you know, you want to stay safe, right? Because if you risk something, you never have to put your faith in anything. It's just like, if I'm safe, I'm like, I'm safe. I don't have to put my faith in nothing. Like, I know everything's fine if I don't jump off whatever this tower.
I think with like safety, for some people, they believe safety correlates with, like what you said, knowing.
With not knowing, exactly.
With knowledge, right?
And I think that's how that servant must have felt.
Right.
Like, I know for sure,
right.
I put this money in the ground. It's not going anywhere. It will he will come back to the same amount of money.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or the same amount of treasure, whatever.
And fear is correlated with the unknown.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But there's a flip side to that. You can have faith correlate with the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And choose to go head first into the unknown.
Right, like the other two servants, where he took a risk and he put his treasures and talents into something that therefore then doubled it. That could have also went the other way. We don't talk about that part of the story, where it's like he could have put in his treasures and talents and lost all of it, and then the master came back to nothing. You know what I mean? Imagine he gave you the most amount of his talents and treasures, and then you gambled it away, and now you have to come back to your master and be like, I gambled it away. But he decided to take the risk, right? And like knowing, right, that it would pay off.
Right.
And it's that knowing, and that term knowing, it's not, it's like a faith word there. Like, knowing that
there's no faith in knowing.
End up working out.
There's no faith in knowing. If you knew everything, you won't need faith.
Right. But what I'm referring to is what he was doing in that type of knowing. You know what I mean? Where he didn't exactly like know exactly how it'll play out, but he just knew it was going to play out well. Or else he wouldn't have done it.
Right. But what do you mean?
The servant.
Which servant?
The two that risked it.
They didn't know. They just had faith that if they go and they invest it, that it'll come back. Right? Mm-hmm. There's no faith in knowing. That's what I've found out. Or I think of it this way, at least, that there's no faith in knowing. And that's why God didn't want Adam and Eve to bite the apple. because then they would have knew. Like the apple was literally knowledge that they are who they are and that they're humans and that they're naked and that they have shame and they have guilt. There's no faith in that. You don't need God when you know everything. You need him when you don't know everything, when it's scary, when you don't know what the next step is and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And I think those two servants, because obviously there's mystery in the Bible, and obviously we're talking about a tale, like it's literally a tale in the Bible that's not like a fictional tale or a parable. But I think those two other servants, they did have that faith that, hey, like even if something goes wrong, my master's still going to be happy with me or proud of me for at least trying. So I think that's part of it, 100%. Now, as
Mm-hmm.
for the servant that didn't do anything, I think that's it. You didn't do anything, and like to your point, imagine if you had that $20, you put it into a back of a drawer, and then a week later you come back and there's rats nibbling on it, right? And then you thought you weren't going to lose anything, but you end up losing it all, and you are a fool for that. So I think my whole point is that we've all been given gifts. We've all been giving something to steward, really, from God, and it's up to us to be good stewards of it. Whether that's your health, whether that's your wealth, whether that's actual physical talents, we have to be good stewards of that. And when you do, and you just sit on it, it's literally a waste. It's such a waste. So there's a saying that's like, you want to go somewhere where there's the most ideas, there's the most dreams, there's the most influential people. Go to a cemetery, because that's where all those dreams and ideas are. They're in the cemetery right now. And the last thing that I want to do is live my life where I never fulfilled anything in my life, and I didn't even try to because I was too scared. That's the last thing I want to do with my life. I'm going to, at least at the minimum, I'm going to try. Even if I fail, that's okay. But at least I tried. At least I tried something. And I did something with this life, this gift that I was given. So that's where I was going with that. Thought it was pretty fire. But
Nice. Yeah, I think it's also, if you just look at things as like your body is a vessel that
yeah,
you were given to take care of. And, like the dreams and striving for things and goals are great as well. But like, even just looking as like, I think so many times, like, it's just like, well, I'm going and I'm trying to get better. And you're like neglecting so many of like your current state of being. You know what I mean? Like, so I think so many people like, can just be focused on like, well, I'm getting this, I'm getting that, like I'm not going to take care of myself, and
right,
I don't eat well, and I don't
right.
exercise, and I don't focus on, my mental health. And I was even reading in my book today about just the power of the people around you, and not in the way that we think. It's just that if you just have more social interactions, like there's been so many different tests that have been ran where it's like people are much more happier when they just have relationships. And it's just like, not, it doesn't even have to be really significant, just someone that you can talk to, someone you can bounce ideas with. Like the more social interactions you have throughout the day. And it's just like, and there's been so many tests as well where he was talking about like people who have we think anyway. So there was this psychology test. It was just a question that was asked to a bunch of students, and it said, when you think of Albert Einstein, what does he look like? And so many of them were like, oh, he's like in a lab wearing a lab coat, doing an experiment or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then they ask him, do you think he's alone? And they're like, yes. Which is actually like, he was actually one of the biggest collaborators and
Not
always had
true.
so
Yeah.
many people around him.
But when you think about
But
it,
when you think
it
about it,
seems
you
like
just
that. Yeah.
picture a
Only
lot of
him.
these big, great people, great minded individuals as
Mm-hmm.
being alone. You picture a lot of these big CEOs as being always alone, when in
Right.
reality, they're always surrounded and they need that team of collaborators around them. I mean, these
True.
companies don't get built because of one person. They get built because of the collaboration of a lot of people. And I think so often we can look at it where, and I'm totally taking this a different route, but it just kind of brought into my mind of like, we like start to think, because in this hustle culture and this idea of success culture, you start to think that it's all on you to make it, and it's all on you to be successful. And maybe you even think, well, it's just me and God, like I don't need anybody else. But in reality, it's you need these collections of people around you. And we even had a really good sermon where it's like, you don't know where God's voice is going to come from. It's like, so often we think we're only going to hear it from like a cloud, or like the wind whispers in our ear, a burning bush,
a donkey,
or like in our head, we think we're going to just hear him there. But you don't know that like all these relationships that are trying to come into your life are also like God speaking through them to you. And so it's so like, that was just like a big eye opener, because I've always been the type where it's like, I like friends, but sometimes I like being alone. And it's a lot of times you need these social interactions, and you need these different type of people around you.
That's true.
To help you. And truly, because the book I'm reading about is about happiness and like a lot of what goes into that. So, and then that chapter was just talking about like the power of social interactions, and that you need someone to lean on, to hold on to when you're going through things, or even when you're not going through things. Just that little, like I was saying, those tests that have been done, that have been done in workplaces, that have been done, different.
Well, think about it,
psychology tests too.
Eve was literally made because Adam was lonely.
Like, yeah, if you look even down, I mean, it's biblical, even down to it, because it's like if we didn't need relationships, and God would have created Adam, and it would just be Adam here on earth.
Yep.
But because God saw that Adam was lonely, like in terms of that, Adam didn't need just God himself, because if you think about it in that way, he wouldn't have saw Adam as lonely, because he's like, well, I'm here, Adam, you got me, I'm God. God knew that like even his own presence almost wasn't enough to help us feel fulfilled in relationship wise. And so it's like,
I never thought about it that way.
Eve to help
that's a big statement, actually. That's a big statement.
Yeah, I never even thought of it now until I was speaking about it.
Bruh. That's a big statement, because that kind of counteracts everything.
Because it's so true. Isn't it true? Like, in what people say, like, oh, I don't need nobody but me and God. Like, it's just me and God against the world, or me against the world, or like God got me. So
all I need is God.
The only opinion that matters is just God's. And while that part is partially true, it's like you still need people around you.
Yes.
And I think that's why, like, one of the worst type of punishments that you can get
is seclusion.
Is seclusion. Like what happens to people when they get put in solitary confinement in prison.
Crazy.
They literally mentally, their brains are not able to wire and function properly, as if, you know what I mean? It's like they start speaking weird, and they start you know what I mean? And what is the one thing also that Satan wants to do when he wants to get to you is he wants to isolate you,
keep you
as much as possible, because that's when you are the weakest. And like kind of what we talked about before with like that Mighty Ducks story. But it is so true just how powerful like social interactions are.
Well, think about it this way. There's a relationship in everything in the world, right?
Everything.
The plants are in relationship with the soil is in relationship with the bugs and the things that have passed in this life and went back into the soil. The plants are in relationship with the sun is in relationship with the moon.
No one thing can function on its own.
The moon is in relationship with the ocean. They can't focus on their own. If one thing is taken away, the whole thing just comes crumbling down, even if a bee is taken away.
And you just look at your relationship to your body. You're like on your just a molecular level. Everything needs the other thing for it to function well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you are missing, obviously, a lung, you know what I mean? It takes so much compensation.
That's why they call us the body of Christ, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're the body of Christ. Because we're a body. We work together.
We do. We all work together.
Wow.
Why he calls us as people.
Yeah. We all work together.
And I think that's so often, like, I think it's like, if you're, looking to grow and looking to get bigger and get better, it isn't about you.
Right.
It's about the relationships and all of that you have around you. So
that
was like something
true.
that I really,
that's really good.
That I read this morning, and I thought it was really good. And that's another thing too. It's just like, when I was talking about your body's a vessel, like exercise all parts of your body, not just physically, like lifting weights and, getting your heart rate up, which is all really great to do every day or at least 5 times a week.
Right.
But to also exercise your brain. Like, don't let your brain mush and come to be so easily influenced. Because, I mean, there's so many Bible verses I can quote on it, but there was even this thing I was watching on YouTube the other day, and it was talking about like the conspiracy and the whole theories of what hypnosis is. And it was really, really good where, basically just came down to that everything is suggestion. It's because the power of suggestion is so real, hypnosis is then real. I won't go too into details because it's a lot, but basically it's like if you're not exercising your brain and you're not working it, like everything, whatever goes into it just automatically becomes an influence to you. And everything already is, but that's why it's like if you're not actively thinking about what goes in and exercising your brain, you're going to allow this world to transform you rather than you renewing your mind, right? Like in the book of Romans, that verse, don't be transformed by this world, but something be renewed by the power of your mind. I don't know it for word, but that's just a big thing too that I thought of. It's like exercising and taking care of all parts of yourself. There's so many times where it's like, I mean, I'm sure that maybe, I know I have anyways, have met people where you can just tell it's like they're not thinking, they're just there, they're not really in the moment. They're kind of eyes are glossed over and they're just like, they're physically there, but they're not mentally there with you. Or their conversations are always the same thing every single time, where it's like you talk to them and it's the same conversation you had last time and nothing's new and it's the same type of things that we talk about. And I've met a lot of people like that, and it's like, versus the ones where you could just tell they're exercising their mind, and like you can get a lot of that through a lot of different things, like I've mentioned before, meditation, prayer, and speaking with different people, and reading a lot of different types of books, and not being so stuck on just social media.
Right. 100% agree with that. I think to kind of wrap up, but I think it's to bring that all back full circle, is that we were in church this past weekend, and a pastor came in that used to be a pastor at our church, Pastor Sean Williams, and he said something that I never really noticed about our church that I really liked a whole lot, and I think will help people who are struggling with, being of the world, I guess. I think some people don't even know what that even means, right? Because they've never been exposed to that type of knowledge. They just think their life is normal, right? But he said that the reason why I love Central is because we never hit people over the head with our beliefs and how people should be. There's no bashing sessions here. There's no
shame.
There's no kicking people in the ass or anything like that. It's just God and encouragement. And we know people react better to kindness and to like encouragement and to love. But for some reason, by default, we just love to criticize and condemn and shame people. And I don't know why we're wired that way. But if there's one way that we can help people do that, renew their spirit, become better, is to just be encouraging and loving towards them and invite them to be around a different environment so they can then start changing. So I think the number one thing that we can help people when they're going through all of that stuff that you mentioned is inviting them to church, inviting them to get around, people of God, people with better characters and people that do think like that. Otherwise, we'll just sit here and we'll just sit on our fence and we'll just talk about how the world is burning down when we've done nothing. So I think that's our responsibility. You just made me have that realization just now, but I think that was fire.
That's true.
Awesome. Well, we are almost at the park that we're about to walk at. I want to keep this in that 20 to 25-minute range so it's less for me to edit, selfishly. So, what is the Bible quote that we end every podcast on?
I lift my eyes up to the mountain. Where does my help come from? I thought we were doing really great on bouncing back
My
and
help
forth.
comes from the Lord, the creator of the heavens and the earth.
Thanks for
We
listening.
love you
Love you
guys.
guys.
Let's
Look up
go.
pod
Look
on
up pod
everywhere.
everywhere. Peace.